GMRS mini mobile radios like the Radioddity DB40-G are fine little radios, but what if you're looking for a radio with a bit more power and lots of customizable channels for a variety of GMRS channel options and configurations? The Radioddity DB40-G Mobile GMRS radio might be right up your alley. Hi, and welcome to the Gadget Talk channel, where we do reviews and how-tos on a variety of electronic gadgets that catch my eye. If you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel. I also will have some affiliate links in the description below to the DB40-G and related products. While I purchase a lot of radios reviewed here, this DB40-G was provided by Radioddity for testing and the review. As always, the opinions are my own. There are a couple of things you need to know right away about the DB40 GMRS radio. This is a single band radio. What that means to you is that you can only transmit on GMRS channels and only monitor frequencies in the 400 to 480 megahertz range. That means that frequencies in the VHF range aren't available. The DB40-G has a dual watch function that allows you to monitor two of the frequencies at the same time. Use the microphone to set the dual watch channels, and swapping between them is easy. The radio is purpose-built for GMRS use. It receives all GMRS channels and can transmit and receive on GMRS simplex channels and repeaters. It has programmable CT, CSS, and DCS codes and 169 channels for duplicate GMRS channels with differing CT, CSS codes or receive-only channels for other things found in the 400 to 480 megahertz band. The radio's display is clean and functional and not filled with lots of other information such as signal strength indicators or fancy fonts. As with most mobile radios, you'll control most radio functions with the microphone's comprehensive keypad. Of course, that includes radio programming, as we'll see in a minute. As you'll see, I found the Customer Programming Software, or CPS, to be the easiest route to take when doing more than just adding a CT/CSS code or changing power levels. It's a free download on the Radioddity's website. As we're about to see, the DB40-G is a basic radio for those who need more power but aren't interested in a bunch of options sometimes found on radios with dozens of menu choices. Let's take a look at what you'll get. So here's the box that the DB40-G comes in. Let's take a look at what we found inside. First thing we have are a couple of connectors and mounting things. This is the programming cable, and most of the programming is pretty simple. You can probably find it easier to do on the microphone, but there is a CPS for it, and this is the cable you would use. Notice that it plugs into the microphone outlet on the front of the radio, and it's got a USB-A version here on this side. Here is the power cord, and a couple of things to point out. It's got a typical T connector here. The other is on the back of the radio. We'll see that in just a minute. And then the other is that it comes with these ring connectors. And so the expectation is you're going to want to mount this to the battery in your vehicle, not to a 12-volt accessory plug, because you can anticipate with a full power radio that the amperage through the line is going to be higher than what a fuse circuit within the cabin of your car is going to allow. Here are some screws for mounting the mounting bracket to your vehicle. Here is a adhesive mount microphone connector right here, and then here is the mounting bracket itself. It's metal. You've got a screw connectors here, and then these little fork-like things are where you can place the rear mounting screw on the radio so that you can get a bit of an angle to get the radio to face up towards you when you've got it in your vehicle. This is pretty heavy, pretty strong, and so should work just fine. Next is the microphone, It comes with a coiled cable, as you'd expect, in this microphone connector. It's pretty long, and as you can see, it's got quite a lot of buttons here. Let me zoom in on this. And so it's got keypads, 1 through 0, hashtag, star, and then some of the same buttons that are on the front of the radio. So the call and scan and record and the mode. And then you've got a couple of programmable keys here. And so we'll take a look at this a little more specifically when we get to the point where we're working the radio with power on. And so we've got the microphone input right here. You've got an LED there for transmit and receive. And then, of course, the push to talk here. And then the last thing we'll show is the owner's manual for the radio. The owner's manual is enough to get you started, but it's typical of these radios in that it points out everything that you need to know, but it assumes you know quite a bit. The good thing is that this is a basic radio, and so even if you're really new to this, the explanations here in the owner's manual is probably enough. And then with videos like this one, you'll be able to get up and running in no time at all. So at this point, it's time to take a look at the radio itself. We'll tilt this up here so you can see. We've got the microphone here. We've got volume here. On-off channels, call, scan, mode. We've got a dim button here. And then the ever popular screen protector that will take off right here. And then a relatively small screen. Again, it's a basic radio. It's going to give you the information you want, but not a lot of stuff that you might find on some of the newer handhelds with large fonts, color screens, and that kind of stuff. As I mentioned in the description, this is a very workmanlike radio, and so it's there for a purpose. Things that don't apply to its primary purpose aren't included. The radio is quite heavy. You can see the ridges here mean that much of the chassis is in fact a heat sink to dissipate heat that it might generate when it's broadcasting. You can see a speaker is embedded right here. As we flip to the back, we've got that cable to plug in the other line of the power input. We've got an external speaker connector here, and then our SO239 for our antenna there, and then just a hard flat surface for the bottom. And so that's pretty much everything that's comes with the radio. It's got a strong, heavy build to it, and the buttons are pretty clear and easy to access. So let's go over to the workbench and turn it on and see how this works with the power connected. So let's go through a quick power on tour of the Radioddity DB40-G. To turn it on, we press the on-off and volume knob here. And it comes up. And so you can see there that it's got a very plain display, which is good. It doesn't give you a lot of information that you maybe don't need. Some of the buttons here, this is volume. This will change channels. As you see here, the dim button will allow you to change the brightness of the display. Once you've got selected, you can just dial it down. And that looks like it's being picked up on my camera pretty well right there, so we'll leave it there. After a couple of seconds, that function times out and you're ready to go and use the radio. So on the display, you can see it's channel 1, the frequency for channel 1. The M1 here means that it is in memory 1, and you can change the channels that you have in these memories. Let me show you just a quick picture of the microphone here, and we're going to be using that, and I'll use a photo during some of these explanations, but here is the microphone, and there in the middle of the top are the M1, 2, and 3 buttons that you can program to be any of the channels that you want. Okay, cancel gets you out of menus. You've got a call button here that sends out the call tone that you have. That's not terribly well documented in the instruction manual, so I'm not exactly sure why you'd use that. The squelch button down here works similar to the dim button, except it goes into the squelch level, and you can make changes there using the knob on the radio itself. Press it again, and it goes away. Now, if you want to change the mode, this is in GMRS channel mode because it says channel up there. You can press the mode button, and now it says VFO. It kind of says more like UFO, but VFO is what it is. And you can see that I've been playing around with this, and on this particular VFO frequency, I've got a CT-CSS code on the receive side. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about is some of the things that are available to you in the menus, and there really aren't very many of them. There are about 10 of them, and to access those, you press this button here, and you go into the menu mode, so you can make changes there to the step. That's if you're using the up and down arrows. It'll go up at 5 kilohertz increments, 6.25, and so forth. I'll leave it here. Here's the scan space. The band I've set for this is wide. Receive CT CSS is 67, which I showed you. To make a change, I'll just turn this. Now it says off. Now I can go busy lockout. Busy lockout is off. Beep, as you can hear, is on. Call tone 1 is selected. Timeout timer I've set to 90 seconds, and then I'm back to the step. And so those are really the only variables that you're going to change. Now you can make these changes in the channel mode too. So for example, if we go to mode, now we're in the channel mode. If I wanted to put a CT CSS code on channel 1, I could work my way through this. The menu is slightly different. It's got the dual watch frequencies. The band is wide. CT-CSS is off on receive. It's off on transmit, busy lock off, tone, call tone, timeout timer. And so this one is the primary difference. And so if we want dual channel watch, so I can listen to 2 at the same time, that's where I'd set that. So I think I have that on channel 4. Now with dual frequency, if we want that on our display, we're going to use our microphone. And we're going to do a long press on the scan button. And so now you can see I have channel 1 as my primary, and if I transmit, that's where it's going to go. But I'm also listening to channel 4. By pressing the hashtag or pound key, I switch those up, and now channel 4 is primary and channel 1 is secondary. And then to get out of this dual watch mode, I simply do a long press on the scan key again. Now I can do those very same things with the various buttons here. So I have a mode, call, scan, and record button on the microphone. So if I press the record button, you see a little line there. I can use this to add letters, but unfortunately this thing times out by the time I get to more than just a couple of letters. And so I haven't been able to break the code on that, or at least my fingers aren't fast enough to enter names in this. As we'll mention in the segment on the CPS, there's not a name column in the CPS. So the microphone itself works pretty well. Let me see if I can get that here in front of the camera. I can go up and down on my frequencies here. I can call my primaries, M1, M2, and M3 there. I can use this button to enter the menu, and it times out after a few seconds. And I can cancel out of there using the cancel button, as well as type in frequencies using the keypad right here. That's a power on tour of the radio and how the menus work. Here's a quick clip of the available power outputs. I'll show low power on the lower 5-watt GMRS channels and high on the upper channels that have a 50-watt limit. So I've got the radio hooked up to my MFJ 874 power meter, and I'm transmitting into a dummy load. Right now I'm on one of the low GMRS channels, so it is locked to low power for this radio. And I've got it on the 5-watt scale on the meter, so we'll be reading it on the bottom arc. And so let's do a quick transmit there. Okay, so it looks like about 2.93 watts on the low GMRS channels. Now let's go up to the high channels. So now I'm on channel 21, and those are in the high frequency range. I'm going to change this up to the 200 watt arc because my power ought to be able to go up close to that 50 watts. And so we're going to be using it on the center arc, or the third arc from the bottom is where we're going to read. And so let's see what we get here. Looks to be about 34, 35 watts right there. And so that's not too bad. And so now I'm going to go up a couple of more. I'm going to go up to another pre-programmed channel. This is one of the repeater channels. So I'm on channel 29 here. And so again, we'll click the push to talk and see what we get. And that's right about 30 watts. And so that's pretty reasonable. Certainly more than a little mini mobile or handheld is going to give you. It's a little less than the power that's advertised, where it says 40 to 48 watts maximum. And so as we've seen, the power output is pretty nice for a little radio like this, and certainly much better than you're going to get with your handheld or a mini mobile. As I showed you in the unboxing clip, the radio comes with a long power cord with loop connectors, not the familiar 12-volt accessory plug found on some mini mobile rigs. That's because with the higher power output, you'll want to wire the rig directly to your vehicle's battery. You'll need to find a grommet through your vehicle's firewall and connect them to the battery and a good chassis ground. You may also want to consider getting a toroid loop or snap-on ferrite bead to help eliminate ignition noise too. Those devices go on the power line near the radio itself. The radio has an SO239 connector on the back of the rig, and most antenna coaxes come with the matching PL259 connector. What you'll need to be mindful of is the connector to the antenna and the antenna mount itself. There are a couple of choices, so be sure the antenna, mount, and coax will all fit together. I'll leave a link to my video on going mobile, where I go more deeply into mounting a radio in a vehicle on the end card to this video. There's a lot to consider and more than I want to go into here. I'll also list a couple of antenna options in the description below. Let's also take a quick look at the CPS. Okay, so here's the CPS for the DB40-G. And I wasn't going to go into this with a great deal of detail, but after playing with the radio for a while, it really became obvious, at least to me, that using the CPS is going to be the way that you're going to want to enter things just beyond the basics. And so if you're working with basic GMRS right out of the box, programming on the microphone works just fine. However, if you want to go a little bit beyond that, you're probably going to want to mess with the CPS instead. So let's start by looking at the program. We've got File, Open, Close, Save up here, Read, Write, Model, Help, where you can pick the language. There's not much to make changes of, but if you're like me, the first thing you noticed is that, well, where's the port number? Well, it's down here. And so I've checked my device manager, and COM port 4 is what was new when I plugged in the programming cable. So I'm going to use COM port 4, and then I'm going to read from the radio. So my read is complete, and there are a couple of things I want to point out to you. First, when this opened up with the radio right out of the box, all these were narrow. You find that from time to time with these radios, and it's kind of frustrating because GMRS is basically a US only kind of radio band, and we use wide. Now, these are the interstitial channels. They are not authorized by rule for use with mobile radios, so that's why these are blued out and they're in the narrow band. So they're not even going to come up when you start scrolling through the channels. And then here are the high power channels, and then here are the repeater channels. Now, the reason I said that you want to mess with channels here in this program instead of on the radio is that it's real easy to get things kind of messed up. So I tried following the instructions, and you can see I got a channel input. But it's not a GMRS channel. I had miskeyed, and so it was there, and it doesn't allow me to transmit, which is fine because it's not a GMRS. It would allow me to add some of the CT/CSS codes, for example, if it was a ham repeater in the 70 centimeter range, but it was real cumbersome, and so I'm going to get rid of this. I don't want that at all, and you can see it's disappeared. I also tried to put something into channel 32, and for whatever reason, that locked the transmitter, and I haven't figured out how to delete it. However, if you're starting here, it becomes really pretty easy. So if I wanted to duplicate this channel 30, there's a repeater near me that is on this frequency. And so I'll put it here in channel 33, and it's 462, 725. Finish out the zeros. And then here you're going to have to change it from a simplex to a duplex frequency. So you just double click in there, add that 5 megahertz offset, so it's 467, 725. It doesn't have a decode or a CTCSS coming out of the repeater, but it does have going in, and it's CTCSS 100. Notice that down here you get these Ds, and these are the DCS codes, but I want CTCSS 100 as my encode. I want this to be wide, and because it's a repeater and it's a mobile, I want to be able to hit it. I'm going to use high power, so I can set that in. Now, again, if I wanted to set something into one of these other frequencies that's in the UHF band, such as a ham repeater or ham call channel, or other simplex GMRS channels that you may want to add a CTCSS code to make them easy to access, you can certainly do that down here. Although adding a CTCSS code to one of the pre-programmed channels is very easy to do. Now, the other thing you'll probably notice here is that there is no name column. And so we're not going to be able to name it in the CTCSS. And I found that when programming in the radio itself, naming it, the instructions follow pretty well, but the timer is so short I can never get more than 2 letters in. So if I wanted to add, a 4-letter name, by the time I got the second letter input, the timer timed out. So that's one of the shortcomings of this radio. That would be nice if they're able to fix that. So I've got this in there, so this would be my customized channel. I'll just have to remember that, as it's not going to show a name, but it is going to show as channel 33. Again, making changes to these CTCSS codes in these repeater channels in the main radio using the microphone or the buttons on the radio is not hard, but if you have several repeaters on the same channel where you live, you're not going to be able to assign them names, but you could add them down here. You just have to remember which one is which. Now we'll see when we see this on the display that it's going to show the CTCSS, so it's not as difficult as I may have made it sound. That was not my intent at all. But here is the CTCSS columns, bands, and power here. Now, the other thing is the parameters, and there's not many. If you've looked at some of these for even some handy talkies, there's a bunch of variables that you can set. But one of the things about this radio is that it's made to do what it's made to do, not a lot of customization. So there's only a handful of parameters you're going to change. So the busy lockout, I've got mine off. I prefer to listen as opposed to have the radio not let me transmit because the channel is busy. I've got my the little beep when I've got my pressing buttons on. The squelch is level 3. If I wanted to change it, I can do that. And then my timeout timer is set for 180 seconds. That's too long for me. I'm going to drop that down to 90 seconds. And so if I were to lay something on the microphone, it'll transmit and block the channel for 90 seconds, but then it'll stop. And so the timeout timer will allow that to happen. And normally I don't talk very long anyway. So I've got these things changed. They're ready to go. And so now I would normally just go here to save. And when I save this, I could select where I want it to go, save the configuration file. So if I mess something up, I can go back and reset it. But I don't want to do that right this minute. So I'm going to hit write and write back to the radio. You can see down here that it's writing. It beeped that said the write was complete, and so now everything is there. And so when I go back to my radio, I ought to be able to go now to scroll through channels 1 through 30 and then up to 33 where I find my custom channel. Here are a couple of pros and cons I found with the DB40-G. First, the cons. I found entering duplicate GMRS channels was difficult to accomplish on the radio itself. Whenever I added a GMRS channel to assign to a new channel, such as channel 33 or 35 or something like that, it would see the GMRS frequency and then automatically assign it to the primary GMRS channel instead of the duplicate channel I wanted. This made duplicating GMRS channels almost impossible on the radio. However, with the CPS, it was super easy to do, and the newly assigned channels showed up as such on the radio. I also found that once I had tried to assign a non-GMRS frequency using the radio, that somehow locked the transmit frequency out on that channel, even in the CPS. Now, I admit it could be user error, so leave a comment below if you see what I did wrong. Another thing I found was that, similar to other radios, the CT-CSS or DCS icon on the display only shows the icon for what function is active. Let me explain. If you have a CT-CSS code set for receive, when on that channel in the standby mode, the CT-CSS icon is visible. If your repeater has an input CT-CSS or DCS code, but not a receive code, the icon is not displayed until you push the Push to Talk button, and the radio transmissions into the transmit function. Next, there is no channel name column in the CPS. That means you can't name your channels. There is a naming procedure in the instruction manual that seems to work with one major shortcoming. While it's easy to add letters to the name variable, the function times out before I could add more than 2 letters. The letters on the display were pretty small, so keeping track of things using channel numbers will probably be easier anyway. While this radio is fairly basic, it does have some nice features. As such, a more comprehensive instruction manual would be a big help. There are a couple of minor translation errors, such as calling the CT-CSS codes subsonic instead of subaudible, but expanded explanations on scanning and adding memories would be helpful for a new operator. What I really like was the clean, easily visible display and the radio's microphone. The microphone is fairly hefty and has a solid feel. It should be able to take a bit of abuse in your 4-wheel drive vehicle or your work truck. The 3 memory channels labeled M1, M2, and M3 make it easy to switch between your personal priority channels. As I hope you've seen, the DB40-G is a very workmanlike radio that doesn't have a bunch of bells and whistles. While it has some faults, its extra power means extra range, and its full range of mobile GMRS simplex and repeater channels means that it's a solid but basic GMRS mobile radio. Join me over here for my video about mounting a radio to your vehicle. As always, if you found this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.